So what are we going to talk about today? So I thought it would be interesting to show you guys a couple of trends, what we are seeing, not only from a US perspective, but also from a global European perspective. And I have two trends that I would like to focus on primarily, which is optimize for efficiency as well as personalization. I mean, personalization is nothing new to us, but let's dive a little bit into that. What the future potentially could bring with the personalization and how we can drive that business in that area forward. And then what I always like to do is, because when you talk about technology, it's often not so easy to transfer from what you're hearing into actually business cases. So, for example, how can we actually facilitate artificial intelligence within different publishing houses? And I usually, try to throw out some ideas, what we are seeing, what we have been done before, what we see with other publishing houses, and that is what we will be focusing to the tail end of the presentation today. All right, let's get into it. Let's face it, the world is a bit crazy at the moment, I have to admit, right? If you not only look at the economic situation, but overall, we could say, well, are we past COVID yet? I don't know. Like sometimes it feels we're past it, then we're right in the middle of it again. But that's definitely still around. We have geopolitical differences. The war in Ukraine is causing us lots of headaches, at least over here in Europe. Which also has to do in conjunction with the energy crisis as well. We're still working on the climate change, which that is actually also consuming a lot of time and effort as well as money. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty certain you also suffered from the labor shortage, finding knowledgeable people and keeping them on board within your organizations. That is definitely something which we are facing on our own, but also a lot of publishers we're talking to is that's a real problem. And then, last but not least, the inflation we currently have to deal with, salaries are increasing and so on and so forth. And if we want it or not, but this is going to affect publishing, the publishing business, the publishing industry. And that is something what we, what you could call like those are the current mega trends or things we would have to keep in mind with our initiatives in our organizations. So let me share a couple of our findings and what we hear from publishers, as well as B2B associations from across the world. We're working with a lot of different associations across the world, and I recently got my hands on a very recent study from a German association, B2B association, from which I would like to point out a couple of things here. Overall, no strategic upheavals can be observed at the moment. Strategic continuity prevails at most publishers. The ranking of strategic priorities, and I will go into the details about that in a little bit, has not changed since 2020, at least from what we are experiencing and what the study shows, which we're going into detail. Only the importance of the aspect basically has increased across the board in the recent years. So if we look at some of the findings of if you want to have the slides, if you want to have the survey and so on and so forth, I can forward that to you. More than happy to share all the slides with you. So in terms of strategic priorities, efficiency and resource aspects continue to take precedence over expansion measures. As in previous years, so you see the comparison. It's the light blue is 2020 and the dark blue is 2022. The optimization, as in previous years, the optimization of processes and the importance of innovative capabilities are still high, having the highest priority. But if you look at the personal aspects, labor shortage and so on, that has improved dramatically. So it went up from like 53% to 74%, for example. And this is something which I can underline very, very heavily here as well, that this is definitely a pain point for not only us as or working within the publishing industry, but in general. One of the findings I find quite interesting in this survey actually is that the use of innovative technology like AI, big data, machine learning, those type of things, it's still very low, right? In 2020 it was about 31%. The publishing houses who participated in that survey, it's about I think it's about 170 to 200 publishing houses. I would have to look up the exact number, but it's a broad variety of larger organizations, medium-sized organizations, and then small organizations. And my feeling is that it's not heavily used across the board yet, because of the smaller, sometimes even to medium-sized publishing houses, because they tend to not jump on that as quickly as the big ones, because there are some very good examples out there nowadays. And I will actually show some at the end of the presentation about, the capabilities of AI and how we all could actually use those things as well. So if we look at it, optimization of processes and workflows. So let's talk about this a little bit. Have you guys heard about low-code, no-code platforms, like from a technology aspect? And Kathy, I can see somebody's raising their hand, so let me know if there are. If you don't know what it is, let me like very briefly describe it. If that description is not enough, feel free to ask some more detailed questions about it. But low-code, no-code platforms, when you think about it, we got off-the-shelf SaaS solutions nowadays. Lots of stuff is sitting in the cloud. Mostly nothing is on-prem anymore. So off-the-shelf SaaS solutions are a very common option. They're a great starting point for out-of-the-box business use cases, but most of the time actually lack the flexibility to solve certain or very specific needs. However, you can usually get from like 0 to 80% with those solutions very quickly in the use cases like collaboration tools, like we're using Teams today, right? CRM systems, ERP systems, human resource systems, everything which has to deal with standard processes which are somewhat not necessarily aligned but known within a certain industry. And this is when we were talking about ERP systems, CRM systems, etc. Then you have custom development, and it's great to actually build very specific business solutions when there is no off-the-shelf SaaS solutions out there. The problem with custom development is they tend to take more time and resources to build and to maintain afterwards, but you are most of the time able to meet about 100% of your original requirement once those custom developments are completed. But the problem here is that there's actually still too many processes that rely on, when I say it, you already know, it's like spreadsheets, manual paper processes. Shadow IT is when people start to go out and just purchase or subscribe to their own little software pieces, or even get them for free, right? And the IT doesn't know anything about it. And those things are very, very often overlooked because they're too small. They're unknown. They're very low on development, very, very low on the development priority list from your IT team, for example. But all of these combined, if you think about them, they add up to a very large amount of potentially, at least, wasted productivity and resources. And this is actually a very fertile ground for the low-code platforms. So low-code platforms are platforms where we refer to them as like a citizen developer. So a person with just interest in technology and IT is able to start building their own apps, to start building their own digital processes. And the interesting thing about, since we're talking about ROI and so on and so forth about today as well, I have a couple of more surveys here, is that the digital transformation landscape is evolving actually very quickly, especially with the low-code platforms. They're a very, very good strategic enabler for organizations. According to Gartner, the demand for mobile apps grows at least 5 times. Think about it, 5 times faster than the IT capacity to deliver. So we have a huge gap of the need of certain digital apps which are used for, being more efficient on my job, getting rid of paper. But we don't have the IT capacity to actually deliver those. IDC predicted that in the next 5 years, 500 million new logical apps, and this is exactly what we're talking about, those logical apps, those low-code, no-code apps will be created. 500 million in 5 years. Gartner stated that by 2024, low-code applications will be responsible for more than 65% of application development activities. Those are very large numbers. And this is because, as you saw on the previous slides, there are so many small things in businesses which are not digitized yet, which are still done on paper, which are still in Excel spreadsheets and so on and so forth. So what can we learn from that? One thing is definitely we need to go faster in many cases. We need to get the tools to our people out there, what they need. We need to get rid of the paper. We need to move faster, and we need to, because our IT is busy. We saw that, it's 5 times more demand on apps than our IT teams can deliver at the moment. So we need to figure out how can we nonetheless keep the business running and digitize processes which are not digitized yet. And one of the interesting things, and this is also in the AI area, which we're indulging later, is really we already have the data to actually do that in most cases.
Just one second, yeah. Sebastian. There were some people that came in late, so I just wanted to let you know that Sebastian said it's fine to interrupt him and to ask questions. So just put your questions in chat. I'm watching the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask Sebastian a question. So I just wanted to say that because a few people were late. Okay, go ahead, Sebastian.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Kathy. So low-code platforms essentially are not only allowing more people to build more apps faster, but offers many tools to make business data surface and being shared across the company, because it's not sitting on paper anymore. It's not hidden in an Excel spreadsheet. And if you think about it, you don't need IT people, you don't need developers anymore, but you need people who are interested in technology and can basically drag and drop things together. And of course, understand technological aspects a little bit. But everybody who is sophisticated in Excel nowadays can build an own app for the organization. One of the problems, though, with people starting to build their own little apps is that that engaging in any digital transformation whatsoever, any initiatives comes with the challenges ranging from budgets. We all unfortunately have a budget constraint. We also have resource constraints, and then once people start developing their own like little apps, you have to instantly think about security and compliance concerns, and this is not. COVID didn't help with that. To my opinion, it's becoming worse with security and compliance because we shifted from all being in the office, being at home, and so on and so forth. So we need to make sure that we secure all our apps which we're running, specifically because it's not all in our own internal network anymore. So many of those challenges have become a little harder. And this is why when you choose when you choose the right platform, and there's many low-code, no-code platforms out there. Google does their own thing, Microsoft is there, and so on and so forth. It is really important to think about what kind of platforms you would like to jump on if you want to jump on such a low-code, no-code platform, because they can help you tremendously with not only building the apps, but with the security and compliance issues as well, because you can integrate them into your already existing security framework there. One of the things is, and this is just data which I have from a Microsoft perspective. Microsoft calls their low-code, no-code platform Power Apps, but it's I'm pretty sure the numbers are pretty equal across the board there. So I don't want to wave the Microsoft flag here, but what Microsoft have found out with their or Microsoft in combination with Forrester Research here, they have published the study here, and that the impact of the low-code or the Microsoft low-code no-code platform is that if you think about 188 return on investment over 3 years of deployment, so 188% of return on building your little apps, achieved within the first 3 years, for example. And the next one is, I just love it. Improved efficiencies. Overall, and I know you can read, but let me read it out. Overall, 1,650 users save 1.6 hours per week by year 3 of the study. 1,650 users, 1.6 hours a week. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about those little efficiency app, logical apps, however you want to call that, apps that help you become faster in what you're doing. And it's not only about becoming faster, but if you think about it, the third point, you may be able to reduce license cost in your organization. Not everybody needs to have access to SAP. Not everybody needs to have access to your ERP system just to put in your timesheet or just to put in your PTO days and so on and so forth. And those are those little apps which can help you actually to get around this. I need to watch the time here a little bit. Democratizing your digital transformation with any low code, no code platform can at least drive to me a couple of different positive outcomes. More people are innovating, which accelerates your transformation. Actually, as I said, you don't need to wait until your IT people come up with a solution to that, but you can broaden your scale of developers, even if the developers are low code, no code developers, right? And it's actually motivating for your employees if they have the ability to actually do something, work on making their processes better, and then see that their little apps could, for example, be used by others in the organization and make them better as well. And by doing this, it is actually way easier to connect more data in the organization because there are still so many paper processes. Even if Excel files are digital, I know this, but they just laying around on some network folders and nobody knows that they exist, but there may be valuable data in it. And with those apps, you can make sure that first of all, that the paper is going away. And second of all, that the data which is being collected in those apps are being put into the right spot. That means that you can do like BI analysis on top of that. And that is actually what helps not only the person who's building the app itself, but may help others, may even help get a better insight from a management perspective. This is just an example of, this is PepsiCo. They build an app for their managers, not the managers, when they visit their stores, and they used to do that all on paper. It's like, how many cans are there? Did they put up the advertisement on the shelves and so on and so forth? A simple app, which they built, didn't take them long. It didn't take them long to actually build. They advanced the app even now that they don't even need to count. If on the very right hand you see quantity of cases 250. They really were sitting there and counting the cases. They sprinkled a little bit artificial intelligence on top of that. Now they actually take in a picture, and the artificial intelligence tells them how many cases based on the picture is in that specific shelf. What we did at K&K is we got rid of our little cashier in our organization, and we have this fridge where you can get yourself some drinks and snacks out of. And we used to have this little cashier sitting there, and you had throw in coins or dollar bills and so on and so forth. And what we now have, we have just a camera installed there. The camera recognizes who am I, and basically knows what I got out of the fridge. Of course, I have to point it to the camera. It doesn't know it by just pulling it out of the fridge, but it knows, I grabbed myself a Snickers. It's $1.49, and I already have consumed 2 of those things, this week. So, you could see it from a sport perspective. And of course, would have to ask your employees if they're fine with collecting those kind of data sets. But this is what you can think about when it comes to, making things quicker. Some of the publishers we have worked with, which are working with low-code, no-code platforms, they have built simple apps like finding a free conference room, right? This may take 10 to 15 minutes to find yourself a free conference room if you don't have an app for that. Saving those 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 times a day can already save you some. So it's a very, very efficient way of making those processes which are not being looked at often still efficient and specifically digital. All right. Any questions about low-code, no-code platform? Because if not, then I would jump into the next topic. Kathy, are there any questions?
Any questions? Just a comment from Holden Page that they're using the primary no-code, low-code stack at HW Media is based on the Irritable Enterprise plan. So anybody's interested in that. So any other questions for Sebastian before we move on? You can either just unmute yourself or put it in chat. I don't see any more questions. So go ahead, Sebastian.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, anytime you can put your questions in chat. So.
Yes, okay, absolutely. Yeah. So talking about personalization, right? That's yeah, you could say it's a trend. But of course, it's been going on for several years now. But we're still learning on how to make this better. You know, as we all know, in the past, it was one size fits all, and we were good with that. But with the new technology nowadays, content is nowadays personalized. And one of those findings of those study, which I can highly underline as well, is that from where you're using personalization, that a lot of publishers are actually using personalization and think it's a very high importance for them. And if you think about it, but 80% still believe it will be more important in the future. So we're definitely have not reached the end of the personalization stream. And this is what we experience at K&K here as well, when we talk to our clients and prospects and the industry as well, that we're already working on it and we're getting better at it, but we're definitely not done with it. And this was one of the analysis here, like in which area does your publishing house think personalization is used and makes sense? And I think we can all agree with that, right? Customer approaching, marketing, those are really, really good examples of how to engage with your customers and how to leverage technology. And Anders here in the crowd can basically talk to you about how to make your newsletter being more approachable for your customers on a real-time basis. But then it's also about content selection. We all know this sometimes. Oh, you based on your past articles you read, you should read this and this articles. This is actually, it's a very nice feature, unless it's not keep suggesting you the articles you have already read. Right. So this is one of the things a couple of our publishers or clients are struggling with. They're saying, well, we got this recommendation engine, but it keeps recommending articles that person already read. So that's something you really, really have to be careful with. And you also have to make sure that you are not creating a content bubble for your audience if you personalize everything. Because if you do, you will most likely only show content to that specific person based on certain demographics and so on and so forth, and this person may not be seeing other articles anymore, even though they may have been important just because of the data you collected. Interestingly enough, I think prices, offers, and layouts are actually not that personalized yet. I think that is an area which will become more and more handy in the future. Data pricing based on certain data, depending on how much the person is using your software and so on and so forth. Because at the end, if you think about it, it's all about if we create value for our clients, and value can be the actual content you're producing, but it can also be the tools you give to that person to actually finding the right content, powerful searches and so on and so forth. That could be something which you can price or the value you can price into your pricing. One of the things I think is interesting when you think about what kind of data we're usually collecting. So, the reading history is the most important, mostly relevant for all of those. Usage of the history of the customer, and so on and so forth. Interest of readers, by either collecting likings, rating or articles and so on and so forth. Sociodemographics, time of usage, like did I read it in the morning? Did I read it in the coffee break? I think the Financial Times, for example, they do a very good job. Whenever you're at the airport and you open up the app of the Financial Times, it automatically shrinks down their articles because they know you're at the airport, you don't have much time, so they don't show you the full length article. And once you're off the airport, then they, it goes back to like the normal length of the article. Those little features are really where technology comes into place to actually help your customers and consumers digest your content in a more easier and quicker way, and also suggesting additional content so that customers are staying on your platform longer. There's a large, very large newspaper. You can compare that to the New York Times. You could say it's like the New York Times of Germany, for example. They are also doing a lot with personalization, but they said, you know what? we really make it clear on our website what areas of the website is based on your recommendations and what areas are not, because they want to make sure that that their customers are not being trapped in this content bubble, right? So they make sure you see the normal articles, but you have a dedicated area which is say, well, this based on your reading history and so on and so forth and the data we collected, this is something which could be interesting for you. And one of the things they made sure is that there's no articles in this suggestion area which you have already read. I think that's one of the most important things there. So I think it's really about not only thinking about what you can personalize, but also how you want to use that technology. Do you want to personalize everything? Do you want to have a balanced mix about it? And this is something which we would have to figure out, where technology not only, in that case, you need to also apply common sense. Technology is not always useful for 100% of the time. So please keep that in mind. So if we talk about personalization, how can we achieve that? Because we can't like write 20 different articles, and you probably heard all about it, but at some point we have to talk about robot journalism. We can't really get around this, and this is now indulging in the area of artificial intelligence. And as we all heard in the past years, oh yes, AI will eat the world, and we all gonna lose our jobs to robot, and at the end they will kill us. So we're not really there yet, and I don't think we will get there very soon. This is actually more summarizing where we currently at. I hope you can see the video, but this is where we are currently with artificial intelligence. It's not that they are not capable of doing something, but artificial intelligence is usually very good at one thing and then very bad at all the others. So I brought a couple of experiences with you to actually showcase why it doesn't really matter how small of a publisher you are, but you should think about working with artificial intelligence. This is an experiment where artificial intelligence was competing against 20 experienced lawyers, and they were basically tasked with a couple of things. They got 5 contracts in front of them, and within those 5 contracts there were 30 potential mistakes. They had 4 hours of time, and the highest accuracy, who found the most mistakes basically wins. Any idea of how high the accuracy of the lawyers were? Just throw in some numbers.
Well, I can't shake because I've seen it, but it was pretty amazing. So yeah, it's
okay. Let me tell you, incredible. The lawyers came in with like 85%, right, which is not bad. And if you look at what the AI came in, it's 95. So it's actually not. It's a difference, right? But it's not too much, right? The lawyers took 92 minutes. And now I want to hear a guess. How many minutes, how much time was passed until the AI was done with all of those 5 contracts?
3 minutes.
I'll be amazed to see the difference.
3 minutes, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually going in the right direction. It was 26 seconds. And this is actually where AI is becoming so useful. It's, of course, also the accuracy, but AI also makes mistakes, right? And it will never be perfect. But it's the sheer amount of time you can save. Think about it. You have 91 minutes and was like 34 seconds now to actually work on other things, So AI can do the fact checking, and you can do the more complex stuff, which AI cannot do, right? Connecting, dots and maybe writing other things and so on and so forth. But why is that relevant for us within the publishing industry? We really need user stories in order to understand where AI can help us to become better and specifically quicker, right? So I've just brought some use cases, and I really hear that often, that publishers come to me and say, Sebastian, we want to do something with AI. And I say, well, that's a great first start, but what do you want to do? And then they say, oh, I don't know, but we heard it's good. And one of the things you have to always keep in mind, that AI per se is not doing anything for you guys. You need to be precise. You need to ask precise questions, or you need to have precise use cases on where you think AI could help, like tedious tasks, which you have to do over and over every day, and so on and so on. Those are actually areas where AI can help. And those are some questions you could ask yourself. Which content is currently relevant for my target group? This is where AI is actually great. Which content should I promote via which channel? Can I automate communication with our customers or potential customers, chatbots, and so on and so forth? Which customer will buy what product? What are there any product combinations I have not yet offered to our clients because I just don't see that? This is where very precise questions, but this is where AI can help you, and this is basically the technology aspects of it. Content creation, chatbots, fake fraud, and all. I'm always struggling with the word anomaly detection. AI-based pricing, we already talked about this, but also content recommendation. We talked about personalization as well, right? Sales volume prediction. One of the things today is like, how much actually should we print, right? I mean, it's more important in the book business, but even in the B2B media business, because like paper is a scarce resource at the moment, getting paper and so on and so forth. So how much actually should we print? That is something where AI can help as well. And if we're really looking at it, we're already using tons of AI. We just don't know it most of the time. If you go on Google or Bing or whatever search engine you're using, and you do some topic search, trend analysis, you can see what is currently trending, not only on YouTube, Twitter, and so on and so forth, but you can see what kind of search is trending on Google, right? We can translate with Google, Microsoft. I really like DeepL.com. That's a very good translation tool if you want to use it. But those are mostly done nowadays not only by hard development or hard coding. It's really like artificial intelligence, which is basically behind that. I know some of you already may have intelligent image or video archives where things are being tagged automatically. You throw in an image with a cat on it, and it automatically has the metadata tag cat on it, and those type of things. Fake news detection. That's very broad already, because it's so easy to generate fake news nowadays with very, very good looking videos. Even in the past, we would have said, well, it's a video. That's very hard to fake. So Obama probably did say this or something like that. We talked about personalization, where we actually can personalize based on certain data sets. Robot journalism, we're going there, within the next slide. And so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of things which we're already doing nowadays, which uses AI to actually make ourselves better and faster. But one of the things which could be the next mile is really to think about, and you probably know all this, like Wilson versus Yorktown. That's probably some football teams. I don't know where they are. They played against each other, and the interesting part of it, the data, even in the lower leagues, is mostly collected. So we have digitized the game. We know that what's the score in the first quarter, second quarter, and so on. We know who scored it. We know if somebody did a foul and so on and so forth. But just looking at this picture, it's not at least giving me euphoria. It's just like, oh yeah, I see the results. But thinking about transforming data, and this is data, right, into storytelling. So this is what you can. This is a game summary. It's done by an artificial intelligence, and it actually summarizes. I think it's actually quite nice. The Yorktown Patriots triumphed over the visiting Wilson Tigers in a close game on Thursday. The game began with a scoreless first quarter. In the second quarter, the Patriots' Paul Delzel was the first to put points on the board. So it's written in a good way, and it's way more fun to actually read through that instead of just looking at the scoreboard. And the interesting about this is produced in seconds, and it doesn't, who's going to read this? Not a lot of people, let's face it, right? It's probably a very low league game. Not millions of people will read it. But for the person who is reading this, it is very relevant, because otherwise they would just look at the scoreboard. Now they're reading through it. So in that moment, it is very relevant, and it doesn't cost you, I'm not saying anything, right? But it doesn't cost you much to produce that. And you can produce tons of those articles in seconds. And to some of your audience, it is relevant. Not to all of them, not to the majority, but to some. I have another example here from a company which is Mid-Media. Anders, maybe you even know them. They recently, I think 2 years ago, got bought by Bonnier. But it's a Scandinavian. I think it's from Sweden. It's a well, it still is, but it's now have a different name. But it's a company which works in Sweden, and you have to understand. They were producing all kinds of different articles within their newspapers and magazines. And what you basically see here, you know, on the horizontal scheme is the number of articles consumed by login subscribers, right? And then on the other axle, you have the number of articles produced per topics. So interestingly enough, if you see the area of house sales, right? They were only a few articles about house sales, but it was consumed by actually a lot of subscribers. So why don't you make more about this? In Sweden, when you buy a house, I think it's actually interesting. If you buy a house, it is announced to the public that the house with the address was sold and the price. So you know exactly what your neighbor's house was, you know, it was costing the people who just in recently. And, you know, of course, that's kind of interesting. I could see myself looking at the website and say, oh, let's see if somebody in my street bought a house and what they paid for it, right? So I can actually understand why a lot of people were actually interested in those articles. But I mean, do you want to have, and those data was publicly available, right? But do you want to have a actual editor sitting in there and typing all of that and trying to, you know, produce articles? And being honest, a whole bunch of houses are being sold across the country every day. So how on earth can you cover that? And Mid-Media went from this number of articles to this number of articles. So quite a lot, and even more people are now reading about it because even more articles are there. And now I can even maybe find an article about a house which is sold on my street. How did they do this? Any idea? Absolutely correct. They did it with an artificial intelligence bot. So before that, you know, without a bot, and you saw that on the statistics, is they produced 2 articles per month in that specific area, house sales. And with an AI bot, they were producing any. Do you have an idea? Just give me a random number, what you could think of.
Maybe 10.
10, yeah. 400 articles per week, not per month, per week, right? Just because converting the data, which is publicly available, into news stories, so to say. And the interesting part about this is this: in 12 months, they produced, you know, 61,800 articles. And the articles generate 7.4 million page impressions with like page impression of subscribers, and 17.6 million page impression in total. In this time, they generated 100 new subscriptions, not saying they don't have a correlation yet, but not saying that it was only done because of the house sales articles which were generated by the artificial intelligence, but they were able in this time frame to generate 900 new subscribers. And this is something which everybody of us, smaller publishers, medium-sized publishers, larger ones are already doing it. We can actually do something like that. You know, those are the larger ones, Bloomberg, where they do their financial reporting. They are converting actually the data, you know, balance sheets into stories, right? They can even do anomaly detection where they say like, oh, this company was doing this and this much profit last year, and now it's only doing this. Let's make an automated story out of that and throw it out there. Forbes, Reuters, Associated Press, what they are doing is basically they draft like articles, but they also draft templates for the reporters. So what they're actually doing is, you know, the fact checking is done by an artificial intelligence, and then the reporter, the editor, can actually work through it and make it more lively, make it a little bit more, you know, more fun to read, maybe.
Just question real quick, Sebastian.
Yeah.
From Catherine Morkins, how many subscriptions did they usually sell during that time period? You had said 900 new subscription with AI. How many do they usually sell?
That's a good. That's a very good question. Let me ask the folks at Mid Media there.
Okay, great.
I will get you that answer. It's a very good one. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll just email it to everybody. Yeah. So, great.
So basically those are the systems they're using. So if you think about it, at least how they called, like Forbes writers, Associated Press, The Guardian, they all use a system which is called Bertie. Bloomberg has their own one, which is called Cyborg. Washington Post, where we saw the transcript of the news, the scoreboard into the actual story that was done by a heliograph from the Washington Post. And the Washington Post actually, in fact, started with the Rio Olympics. I don't know if any of you guys watch the Olympics. I do, but I only watch some of the sports. But some of those sports in the Olympics, they're actually very niche. They're very niche, and it doesn't really make sense to send, somebody there, and actually write about this. And this is where they started to use heliograph for that, to write those articles about niche sports in Olympics. Because remember, it is an important topic for the person who is currently reading it. Otherwise, that person wouldn't be reading it. It's not for the broad public, but if it doesn't cost you much to produce those smaller articles, for the person who's reading it, it is highly valuable content. LA Times, you have to buckle up for that a little bit. I think it's a little edgy, but they have like a homicide report, and it utilizes a robot reporter with the ability to include tons of reports or tons of data, like victim, gender, race, cause of death, and so on and so forth. And I just checked it out last night again, and to present you like a more actual screenshot there. This is what you get, and you can scroll down forever there. And again, here it's data, and you're converting that into a potential news story. I could filter what happened in my neighborhood, what happened in my street. You see, Horace B. Ray, a 31-year-old black male died Wednesday, and so forth. So, not saying that this is necessarily great news, but again, here, not probably a lot of people are reading the whole thing, but they filter down to what is happening in their area, and so on and so forth. And when I go back one more slide, when I said that the Associated Press is using Bertie here, one of the things which you can see on the Associated Press, and this is a quote I stole from them, you could say, is 20% more time for corporate finance journalists just because they're using Bertie. Because now that the AI is doing the fact checking, they have more time for actually the actual storytelling, and massaging the content in a way that it's even better, because they have more time now to actually do this. And this is actually where artificial intelligence still hits a limit, where it's not definitely the same thing as a human being is writing this thing. But you can save up times for your reporters, for your editors, by helping them get rid of those, annoying tasks. Tagging articles, tagging metadata. It's boring. 95% of that could be done by an artificial intelligence, and then you, as a human being, can add the last 5%, for example. One of the important things here, down there, the error rate reduced even when more than 10 times the number of articles was produced. So this again has to do with one of the examples I showed you earlier with the lawyer. It's not only the sheer amount of speed increases, but you're even able to generate 10 times more articles, right? But the error rate of those even decreased. And this still, I'm working in that space, and I'm working with artificial intelligence for quite some years now. This is still amazing to me, right? We're so much faster, and our error rate reduces. So why on earth are we not thinking about using that? And I would like to finish it off with that. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's not from me, unfortunately, but it really applies to our situations currently, specifically in the publishing business, it's really not the strongest and the most intelligent who will survive, but it's the one who can, manage change the best. And this is what I really would like to throw out there. It is possible to work with artificial intelligence. There are very good tools out there nowadays from Microsoft, Amazon, Google. All the big ones are doing it, where you don't need to be an expert in neural networks or how to develop neural networks. I don't know anything about well, I know a little bit about neural networks, but I can't build a neural network. But I can build you an app with a low-code, no-code platform in believe it or not, in 20 minutes, I can build you an app where I can take a photograph of your business card and artificial intelligence extract the information, your name, your company name, job title, phone number, and so on. Extract that out of the image and put it in my CRM system. This is how easy it nowadays actually is.